Little girl, what are you doing here?
I would say my stepdad is always beating me.
When a feared lone rider pulls his rumbling Harley off a desolate Texas backroad, he finds a small girl sitting in the dirt by a wooden fence, bruised, trembling, and clutching a worn teddy bear like it's the last safe thing in the world. Known across biker circles for his cold silence and a reputation that makes grown men look away, Maddox is the last person anyone would send to save a child. But what he does next shocks everyone, including himself. His unexpected act of protection sets off a chain of events built not on violence, but on something far more dangerous: justice. The tattooed stranger with calloused hands and a nickname nobody questions becomes, against all odds, the one person standing between a little girl and the man who hurt her. His quiet response to her desperate plea doesn't just change her world, it reveals the truth about his. What started as a solitary ride down an empty Texas road becomes a story about the people society writes off, and why you should never confuse a man's appearance with his character. But what exactly did he do that shocked everyone? Stay with me, because this one will stay with you. The Harley growled low as it rolled through sun-scorched fields outside Brenham, Texas, its engine the only sound for miles in either direction. Coal reaper Maddox kept both hands steady on the handlebars. Hands that had drilled oil rigs in 115-degree heat. Hands that carried scars from a harder life he'd put behind him without ceremony or explanation. The wind pushed through his graying beard as the road unspooled ahead, flat and endless and mercifully empty. This was the only church Cole had ever trusted. The open road, no congregation, no questions, just the clean, honest hum of an engine doing exactly what it was built to do. He'd been riding like this for 3 years now, ever since he'd walked off the rig for the last time, packed 2 bags, and pointed the Harley south with no particular destination in mind. Quiet suited him. Alone suited him better. But on this particular afternoon, something on the shoulder of the road made him ease off the throttle. Something small and still and very wrong. Before we dive into this incredible story, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I love seeing how far this channel reaches. And if you enjoy powerful emotional stories with real-life lessons, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. He'd been riding since before sunrise, and the Texas Hill Country had long since given way to flat scrubland, the kind of landscape that didn't ask anything of you. Cole liked that about it. No buildings crowding the skyline, no voices competing for space in his head. Just caliche dust, mesquite trees, and a sky so wide and blue it almost looked like something a man could believe in. At 42, Maddox had earned his solitude the hard way. 3 years on offshore rigs, another decade bouncing between crews across West Texas, and enough miles on his Harley to have worn the grip tape smooth twice over. Men in biker circles knew his name. Most didn't push further than that. He preferred it that way. He was somewhere between Brenham and nowhere in particular when something near a wooden fence line caught the edge of his vision. He didn't think. He just eased off the throttle. He pulled the Harley onto the shoulder and killed the engine. The silence that followed felt different from the peaceful kind he'd been riding through all morning. Heavier, charged with something wrong. She was maybe 8 years old, sitting in the dirt against a fence post like she'd been placed there and forgotten. Her clothes were smudged with dust and something darker. A worn teddy bear was pressed tight against her chest with both arms, the way a child holds the only thing left that feels safe. Her leg was angled beneath her in a way that told Cole immediately she hadn't sat down by choice. He swung off the bike and took 2 steps forward. She saw him, all 6 feet of him, the tattoos climbing his forearms, the worn leather, the beard, and her whole small body recoiled against the fence post like she was trying to disappear into the woods. Cole stopped. Something in his chest pulled tight. He crouched down right where he stood, putting himself closer to her level without closing the distance between them. That was when she said it, barely above a breath, her eyes wide and fixed on him like she was bracing for something she already knew was coming. "Please don't hurt me. I can't move." Cole felt those words land somewhere behind his sternum. Not anger. Not impatience. Something older and quieter than either of those. Recognition. He had seen that look before, on roughnecks after bad accidents, on men who'd been broken down past the point of pride. But never on a child. Never this small. He kept his hands open and visible, his voice dropping to something he barely used anymore. "I'm not here to hurt you, kid. I promise you that." He didn't move closer. He just stayed low, stayed still, and waited, giving her the one thing nobody had apparently thought to offer her recently: space. He let the quiet stretch until she was ready to fill it. It didn't take long. Children who've been carrying fear alone will talk, eventually, to anyone who stops long enough to listen. Her name was Lily, she told him. Lily Grace. And then, slowly, the rest of it came. How Derek had gotten mad, how he always got mad, how this time he'd grabbed her arm and then just left. Drove away and left her there. As she spoke, her sleeve shifted, and Cole saw the bruises. Not one. Not two. The kind of bruising that had a pattern to it, that told a story no 8-year-old should have lived through. His jaw tightened once and didn't loosen. "I'm scared to go home," she whispered, pulling the teddy bear closer. Cole looked at her for a long moment, something settling behind his eyes, cold and clear and certain. This wasn't just about getting her somewhere safe. This was about making sure Derek Boone answered for every single mark on that child. He moved toward her slowly this time, and she didn't recoil. That meant something. Cole reached up and peeled off his leather vest, the one with 10 years of road worn into every crease, and draped it gently around her thin shoulders. It swallowed her whole, the hem reaching past her knees, patches and all. She looked down at it for a moment like she wasn't sure what to do with something that had been offered without conditions. "Kid," he said quietly, "I ain't here to hurt you. I'm here to get you out." When she looked up at him, something in her eyes had shifted. Not all the way to trust, but close enough. Cole slid one arm carefully beneath her knees and lifted her like she weighed nothing, keeping her injured leg supported and still. He settled her onto the Harley in front of him, one arm steady across her. Then he asked, almost gently, "Lily, where do you live?" He didn't head for the hospital. He knew that the moment she gave him the address, a quiet, deliberate knowing that settled in his gut like a stone dropping to the bottom of still water. He eased the Harley onto the road, keeping the speed low and steady, one arm anchoring Lily against his chest. She held on without being told to. The wind was gentle at that speed, and somewhere in the first half-mile she started talking again. More details this time. How long it had been going on, what Derek said when he was angry, how nobody in town seemed to want to know. Cole listened to every word and said almost nothing. He was thinking. A 911 call with no evidence meant Derek's word against a scared little girl's. Cole had seen how that math worked out. But his phone in his jacket pocket, that was a different equation entirely. The risk was real. If this went sideways, he wouldn't just lose his freedom. Lily would lose her only chance. The house sat at the edge of town where the pavement gave way to packed dirt, a low, tired-looking place with a truck in the driveway and a broken porch light nobody had bothered to fix. Cole brought the Harley to a slow stop and cut the engine. The silence felt different here. Thicker. He sat for a moment, reading the place the way a man learns to read situations when he's spent enough years in them. "Stay here," he told Lily. She shook her head, arms tightening around the teddy bear. "I don't want to be alone." He looked at her, this small, bruised, impossibly brave little girl, and didn't argue. He reached into his jacket pocket, thumbed open his phone, and pressed record. Checked that the screen was dark. Slipped it back in, mic facing out. Then he took Lily's hand, the way he imagined a decent man would, and they walked toward the front door together. Derek Boone was on his feet the second the door swung open. A thick, red-faced man whose surprise lasted about half a second before it curdled into rage. "What the hell are you doing with my daughter?" Cole's voice stayed level. "Your stepdaughter. The one you beat and left on the side of a road." Something flickered behind Derek's eyes. Calculation. Then the decision that aggression was safer than caution. He was the kind of man who'd made that choice so many times it came automatically. "You don't know anything about what goes on in my house." "Then tell me," Cole said simply. And Derek did. The rage poured out of him in exactly the way Cole had counted on. The justifications, the entitlement, the specific details that only a guilty man volunteers. That brat needed to learn respect. "I'll teach her however I want." He never noticed the phone. Cole had already texted the address to Sheriff Wade Collins before they'd reached the porch. Now, faintly but growing sirens. Sheriff Wade Collins came through the door with 2 deputies at his back and one hand on his belt, reading the room in the practiced way of a man who'd walked into bad situations for 20 years. Derek was still talking when the cuffs went on. Still talking, which was almost poetic. Cole pulled out his phone and held it toward the sheriff without ceremony. "Everything you need is right here." Wade took it, listened to 30 seconds of the recording, and didn't need to hear more. He nodded once at his deputy. Derek Boone was read his rights in his own living room while Lily stood pressed against Cole's leg, her small fingers wrapped around his hand, the teddy bear tucked under her other arm. She wasn't shaking anymore. Wade looked at Cole with an expression that had shifted considerably since he'd walked in. "That was risky," he said quietly. "But smart." Cole just shrugged. By the time social services arrived and the paperwork began, he was already moving toward the door. Weeks later, Lily Grace Harper was sleeping through the night. Her new foster home sat on a quiet street with a tire swing in the backyard, and a woman named Mrs. Calloway who left the hall light on without being asked. Lily was enrolled in a new school. She'd smiled 3 times on Tuesday. Her caseworker had written it down because it felt worth recording. Sheriff Wade stopped by on a Thursday afternoon, hat in hand, and found her sitting on the porch with a vest draped across her lap. Worn leather, patches and all, far too large for her small frame. She ran her fingers along the collar the way you touch something you're afraid of losing. "The biker man," she said quietly. "Is he okay?" Wade sat down beside her. "His name's Cole Maddox," he said. "Folks call him Reaper. And he's one of the good guys." Somewhere south of Brenham, a Harley rolled through the last amber light of a Texas sunset. No destination, no fanfare, just the road and the quiet satisfaction of a conscience that had finally earned its peace. Sometimes the people who look the most dangerous are exactly who you need when the world turns crew.
And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed it or learned something new, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps support the channel. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Drop your thoughts or questions in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.